Hey everyone, I'm David.
I'm Ro.
And this is Sweetie. And there are a ton of videos on YouTube and the web with tips on RVing, but we found that most of them cover a lot of the same stuff, especially like beginner tips and stuff like that. So we thought long and hard about what tips do we have that we've learned that we've never heard given in any of those videos. And so here's a list of RVing tips you've never heard.
The first tip I want to share with you guys is actually one of the very first things that we did in our trailer. I think before we ever even hit the road. And it is that our trailer didn't really come with a lot of countertop space, so we had to improvise. And the thing that I really recommend everybody doing is if your RV sink doesn't come with a sink cover, I recommend making your own. We went ahead and made ours out of UHMW plastic. We were able to get a sheet a little bit bigger than our sink from Menards, and then I just took some cardstock, I taped it to the sink, and I just kind of like rudimentarily drew a line around where this plastic would fit in, and then my wonderful husband took it outside and cut it with a jigsaw 2 size, sanded it up, make sure that it would fit this really, really well, and then drew these nice little holes right here so that, it can be easily lifted out without having to like figure out how to get your finger around the edge or something. This was really nice. It was really cheap, easy to make. I think it cost maybe $10 for that entire sheet of plastic. And let me tell you guys, our countertop space in here is tiny. You can see here next to the sink, I've got like a little bit here, a little bit on the other side, and right here in front. And our stove did not come with this stove cover. We ended up having to buy this. I think we only bought it like 6 months after we hit the road, and I'm so glad that we did. Between this sink cover and the stove cover, we've now basically tripled our countertop space. All we've had was this tiny space right here. This is it. This was the extent of our countertop space until we added these two. And I'm so freaking glad that we did. Now the sink is actually a prep area, we clean all the countertops before we make dinner, and then I can get our big massive cutting board out and I can actually use the sink as prep area instead of just that tiny space over there. And it's so wonderful. The stovetop is exactly the same. It's also a great place to dry our dishes. So adding little things like this to improve countertop space is definitely an excellent tip, and I'm so glad we did it.
The next tip is to get a temperature gun, and these are super handy when RVing, and the main thing that we use ours for is to make sure that our fridge and freezer are operating properly, because the adjustment on these is just that little thermistor that you can slide up and down, and it's just so imprecise. You don't really know where it's at, like what temperature setting you've got, unless you can measure it. And so with one of these, you just open the door and you shine it at one of the walls to see what the temperature is. And ours right now is reading 40 degrees, 40.5. And so I know that, that's pretty close. The recommendation is like 38 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the freezer, same thing. You can just shine it in there, shine it at the back wall, and it is at -1 degree. So our freezer is actually a little cold. But, I at least know that they're both cold enough and working properly. But then you can adjust that thermistor back there to get them where you want. And other things you can use this on is to shine on or to point it at the inside of your stove to check to see if it is properly preheated, because, our stove doesn't tell us when it's preheated like a residential or oven would. And you can also use it for grilling, again, to make sure that your grill is properly preheated. Same thing, you just shine it at one of the walls of your stove or grill. And then another thing you can use this for, you see there's a lot of uses while RVing, is to point it at the wheel hubs to make sure that your wheel hubs aren't overheating and being damaged. So like after you've traveled a number of miles, you can then get this out, point it at the wheel hub, and it should be a little warm, but it shouldn't be super hot. The next tip is to regularly treat your RV's rubber seals on the windows, doors, and storage bay doors with 3-in-1's RV Care Rubber Seal Conditioner. 3-in-1 RV Care Rubber Seal Conditioner is specifically designed to condition and protect all type of RV rubber seals, including those on slide-outs, doors, windows, and compartments. Its long-lasting, water-resistant formula reduces friction and wear. Its special UV shield prevents cracking and fading and can help extend the life of your seals. And it's super easy to use too. All you do is spray it directly onto the seal, and then wipe it off with a rag or paper towel like what I have. And that's it. Now your seals are protected from the elements. Now back to the rest of the tips.
Another little tip I have for you guys in regards to the fridge is that you should probably refrain from stuffing it a little too full. Now, we have had that problem because we have a very small refrigerator, and I'm sure that many of you that have a small trailer or fifth wheel like us probably have a similarly sized RV refrigerator. And we have found that as we fill our refrigerator up and we fill it maybe a little too full, we get a lot of frost forming on the fins in here. Now, our freezer does the same thing, and there's a lot of frost that forms on the back, and I'll actually show you. We currently have frost formed on the back of our freezer right here. Oop. You can just see it coming off there on the back. Now, obviously our freezer is not overfilled, and so that means that we very likely have a bad seal, hopefully just on our freezer though, because our refrigerator isn't having that problem. We have had to defrost our entire refrigerator and freezer before because of frost forming. And in our refrigerator, it typically forms on these fins back here, these metal fins. And thankfully, there's no frost forming on this, so we emptied this out pretty good to keep that from happening. But that's a major problem, you know. Overfilling your refrigerator can lead to inefficiencies. It can lead to that frost, which can make it to where it doesn't cool very well, and then food goes bad. And that's what we were having an issue with. Our milk and our yogurt and even our cheeses started to go bad very shortly after getting it because our refrigerator was just so inefficient because our fins were so frosted over. And you might not think that it is going to be a big difference like that, but it really truly is. And if you run your refrigerator on electricity, you know, you could be using a lot more electricity than you need. If you are running it on propane, you know, because it's running inefficiently, it's going to use a lot more propane. So, you know, you want to make sure that your fridge and freezer are properly packed full. Unlike a residential fridge, which uses fans within it to help circulate the cold air to properly cool your food, RV refrigerators like ours use the metal fins in the back to cool, and all it does is that cold air then sinks to the bottom of the refrigerator to cool the food throughout it. And if your refrigerator is packed super duper full, then those fins just cannot keep all of your food properly cool. These are relatively inefficient.
The next tip is to tighten your stabilizer jacks every few days. It's not as necessary if you're on, you know, a hard surface like what we're on right now, blacktop, but we still have found that it needs to be tightened every few days just because the trailer itself will settle. But it's really important when you're on like dirt or especially a soft sand. You know, you'll tighten them down the day you get to the campsite and everything will feel nice and sturdy and stable. And then over a few days, you know, the trailer will just start to feel loose again. It'll feel very rocky and shaky, and you know, you just come back out, tighten them back down, because the sand, the dirt, whatever will have settled under the weight of the trailer itself, and you know, they'll just need to be tightened back up again. And then you'll definitely want to tighten them after each rain, again, if you're on dirt or sand, which makes sense because that rain will come in, it'll sort of pack that sand and dirt down a little bit, and so the stabilizers are then not tight to the ground. Quick tighten up and you're good to go.
the next tip that I have for you guys is another one that we did very early on in our travels, and that was to completely replace the screens that came with our RV. Now, if your RV or trailer is anything like ours, it came with probably regular house screen, which is, you know, it's a little bit thicker, little squares, stuff like that. But the problem with that is it allows, hi Butters, it allows, like, small mosquitoes, like no-see-ums, gnats, things like that, easily get into the trailer. And because we're already camping where there are a lot of bugs, chances are you get a lot of bugs inside. And we aren't able to replace the screen in front of our Max Air fan with no-see-um netting, but all the rest of it we are, including our front door, so we did. And I'm really glad that we did, because we have been to so many places where there are teeny tiny bugs like crawling on the screen, because, you know, as it gets buggy or late at night, they start wanting to come in where it's lighter. And there have been so many times where I've really wanted to check to see how good these are, and it's great. The problem is, though, they get really dirty really easily. You can probably tell that it's kind of dirty. But these are really easy to clean. You just take them, you just rinse them off, and I typically just use like a paper towel to wipe it off real quick, and then you just pop it back in, and they're so clean, and it really improves the efficiency of the airflow in here as well with nice clean screens.
The next tip is another stability tip, and it is for travel trailers only, but it's to make sure that your tongue jack is extended as little as possible to maximize stability. And ways you can do that is, like what we've done here, is stuff as much wood under the tongue jack before leveling the trailer. And also if, you know, sometimes the front of the trailer is really high off the ground. So if you can instead orient your trailer in a way to where you need to lower the front tongue jack to level the trailer, then that will maximize your stability. And the reason is because, as you know, this telescopes out of the tongue jack and gets longer and longer, this whole part just becomes more wobbly. But, you know, as it sits right now, since it's so short, it's very stable. And this can be very, very noticeable, as we have been places where there's no other option but to jack the tongue jack way up, because maybe we're on a big slope, and just for whatever reason, we can't orient our trailer the other way, like I said. Typically, it's because we have solar up on our roof, so we need to orient the trailer a specific way relative to the sun to maximize our solar. But yeah, when we've got this front tongue jack extended all the way out, you can really, really tell that it's not very stable in there. And as we're walking around, or as our dog Sweetie, big Rottweiler, is running around in there, you can actually see the front shake around a little bit. So yeah, have this extended out as little as possible for maximum stability.
This next tip is one that we're not actually doing right now, but don't worry. We're looking for what we need in order to do this next step, and that is to get a pizza stone for your RV's oven. Now, if your RV's oven is anything like ours is propane. That means that it probably has just one single giant flame that runs only directly down the center, which means that there's actually some really improper heating in our oven. Typically, if we're cooking pizza, it like scorches just down the center line and the outsides aren't cooked all the way. If I want to make cookies or brownies, you know, a lot of the times whatever's in the middle gets done first, and the outside's still raw. You know, a lot of times even just rotating it in here, it doesn't really help very much. And the best way to fix that is to get a small pizza stone that fits in here. And I was given one for, or as a present this last Christmas. However, hi Alice, it was just a little too thick, and I was unable to fit my pan on top. So I'm still looking for one that fits in here properly. But that will help distribute the heat evenly, so that not only are you not burning your food, but you're actually properly cooking it all the way too. And that is actually a super major problem in a lot of these RV ovens, is that it's just not very good at properly cooking your food, and that can lead to a lot of really ruined meals. So if you're anything like me, that means that I just don't use my oven very much, but I would really like to. And a pizza stone is the best way to solve that problem.
And then the last tip isn't so much a tip as just a heads up to you new RVers. These heating vents are going to get so dirty so fast all the time, especially if you have pets that shed a lot. Yes, I'm talking about you and our cats. These get just so full of dirt, sand, and hair so quickly. I have to vacuum these out on a almost daily basis if we're using our furnace daily when it's cold out. And it's because they're like right in the center. Oh, did I stop petting you? Oh, I'm sorry. How could I do that? They're right in the center of the walkway, and we have 3 of them, and they're all just right in the center. And so you're always walking over them. Our pets are always walking over them, and they just collect dirt and hair so quickly. Whereas like in a house, typically the heating vents are out on the sides near the walls, and so, you know, they just don't collect it as fast. And, you know, they're very shallow, you know, it's only about, you know, this deep. There, my hand is touching the bottom of it. And so what we do, because we have to clean these so often, is we actually just took the screws that hold these in. And so I just take the vacuum and I get it in there and I clean these like every day sometimes, or every other day. Just pop this off. I don't have to worry about taking the screws out of the floor because, you know, that would just make this such a bigger hassle, and it would probably strip those the wood out anyway, and those screws wouldn't really hold it anymore. And yeah, that's just a heads up to you. You can do what we did, pop the screws out, make it really quick. But yeah, these vents get dirty so fast.
So those have been some of the tips that you probably haven't heard of from us before, or maybe even other people. And we really want to share those tips with you guys because they're sort of minor, but also things that, you know, we just kind of had to learn on our own. And, you know, if we had been told about some of these, it probably would have saved up us a couple of headaches, especially things that had to do with things like stabilization. That would have helped a lot earlier on in our travels. And we're sure that there are tons of people out there that have even more tips for things like fifth wheels and motorhomes, maybe even more travel trailer related tips that I'm sure you're wanting to share. And go ahead and post those down in the comments below so that you can be helpful for other people as well.
But that is all for this video. We will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye. Sweet Pea, say bye.
Oh.